Hey everybody, and welcome back to Hospitality Marketing. I'm here with Nathan Farley today. He's going to help me talk about market planning. How are you doing today, Nathan?
I am doing just fine. I have my coffee. So as long as I got that coffee, everything will be fine.
You're ready for anything now.
Exactly.
Anything the world throws at you. Okay,
We'll
like
try
I was telling Nathan, I think this is going to be a pretty short lecture because this section, the market planning, is kind of how do we present a summary of our information. So there's not a huge amount in this chapter, but we'll go through it and hopefully have a good discussion. So this is, right here we'll start. Nobody plans to fail, but people fail to plan. The reality is there are lots of people who open businesses. There are lots of restaurants, especially that open, that think, I know how to cook, or I'm a good cook, or, there's not a Korean restaurant out there, and that's the extent of their planning. And that lack of planning, maybe you'll succeed. Maybe you'll succeed. But you'd never want to be in a situation where you're trying to figure things out. You're encountering problems that you haven't given any thought to. The purpose of the planning is to be ready. That you plan for all the scenarios you can think of, so that when something does happen, you have a go-to plan of action. That's the important thing. You don't just show up and wing it, which of course, I'm guilty of doing for a lot of things, but you can't do that when you're in business. What about you, Nathan? You ever just show up and wing something?
Occasionally, I play D&D and I run games by the seat of my pants sometimes. So it's like, oh, I have 2 ideas for a plot. Let's wing it.
So
and sometimes it goes well, sometimes it crashes and burns.
So are you a DM?
Been a dungeon master for 4 years. DM for life.
All right. So do you have people like say, "Oh, you're a DM. Do you have any games going?" Like they just want to show up and have you run, because the DM does all the work.
Oh yes, And I'm running 1 campaign by the books, and I'm running 2 homebrew campaigns. So
how much work is there? How much work do you put into it as a DM to be ready?
A general rule of thumb is for every hour of playtime, there's at least 2 hours of prep work, whether that's taking notes, writing story, making maps, or just contemplating what the heck my players are going to do. And my sessions are about 6 hours every week. So
you're sitting there trying to anticipate what the players may do. You're running all sorts of possible scenarios, and you're prepping. You're at least creating a plan for what to do in case, right?
Yep.
That's market planning. That's basically that process of being prepared in case. That's what we're going to talk about.
Contingency.
So we're going to talk about, first, a property level marketing plan. But property level is a single location, like where to put a restaurant or where to put a hotel. That one piece of property, that's property level. And so for every property, you need to have a plan. Why does McDonald's build a McDonald's at this exit? Well, it's because they've done a lot of market research and they know how many cars go past, and then they know where, what the zoning situation is, that they're going to be building new housing development. And they have planned everything for where to put that location. Same thing with hotels on Jekyll. There's a constant battle about building more hotel rooms, but part of they have to plan all of them, and what they're doing is like, well, we can fill this many rooms at this price point for this many months, and for this particular. Now that's different than when we're talking about like at corporate level, which is, how's McDonald's going to compete against Wendy's? That's a very different situation than why do I put a McDonald's, at this location? So what we're talking about first is this property level marketing. So this is something like a manager would do. It probably is his bosses or his investors. And the first thing is, so Nathan, in school, have you ever been given an assignment and there's a abstract, and then there's 20 pages you have to read?
Yep.
Yeah. So have you ever just read the abstract?
I'd like to say no, but yes, it's happened where I just read the abstract and I forgot about everything else. I'll admit
Okay.
that's happened.
So in this marketing plan, like I said, it could be 20 pages of contingency planning and all the possibilities, but we create what's called an executive summary, which is the abstract. It's a one-page summary of what this document says. And we call it the executive summary because this is going to go in front of an executive, and what he wants to know is, what do I need to know? And so
All the high points.
Yeah, this is a quick, dirty summation of what all this. Now, here's all the supporting documents where I support my arguments. These 20 pages that follow. But this is the high point, and so that's the executive summary. That comes first. We usually try and keep that down to about a page or maybe 2 pages, depending. So the first part of the marketing plan is we have the summary, but of course this means we're working backwards because that's the last thing we create is the executive summary. You have to have all the other stuff in place first, like your mission statement. And again, this may not be property level, but have you ever had to, in another class, create a mission statement or examine?
Yes, I'm actually the vice president of a club here on campus, and I had to recreate our mission statement for the CCGA website.
So what's the club?
I am the vice president of the Urban Gaming Club. If you look around campus this week and see anyone with Nerf blasters, I'm the reason why.
I got an email about that. So you said you had to create a mission statement.
Yes.
Okay, so what's the mission statement? Do you remember it?
I can't remember the exact verbiage off the top of my head, but in short, the Urban Gaming Club is an organization whose goal is to enrich the lives of students on the College of Coastal Georgia with non-standard gaming. Anything ranging from tabletop role-playing games, ultimate frisbee, there are a couple other mentions, but anything that's not video games or standard board games. So not Sorry, Monopoly, Chutes and Ladders, all the while doing things in a way that are acceptable with social distancing.
Remind me when this is over and I'll talk to you about some gaming, but I regularly attend what's called the National Pop Culture Association Conference. They have an entire
I've heard of that.
They have an entire section on gaming. And so it's any kind of game you can remember or any kind of game you can think of. So when this is over, remind me and we can talk about that for a second.
Fantastic.
Something you might find interesting. So mission statement is like, why do we exist? It's our raison d'etre, it's our reason for existence. And a good mission statement should be brief. It should be easy to remember, and it should sum up what you do. And a lot of mission statements get too grand in what they're trying to achieve. The way I always think of a mission statement is that the line level employee, the person who's working the counter, the person who's behind the front desk at a hotel, they're the ones who should know the mission statement. So go ahead.
Couldn't it also be, I've heard it described as the elevator speech. Someone finds out that, oh, you work for XYZ. What does XYZ do?
Yeah.
And you have enough time to go from floor 0 to the 10th floor. That's all the time you got, 30 seconds.
And for a mission statement, I would say that maybe needs to be even briefer than the elevator pitch. And the reason is, and this is my personal opinion as a manager, is that the executives, the people in charge, they know why the business exists. And what the mission statement is for that frontline employee, the guy who's sweeping the floors. It's like, what does this business do? Because the mission statement's going to help him when he gets into that situation where maybe his boss isn't there. And he can think, well, this is what our business is about. One of my favorites, and the one I think company that does it really well, is Ritz-Carlton. And their mission statement is, ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen. Very brief, tells you exactly about who their customers are and how they expect you to behave. They expect you to be respectful. They don't expect you to act like a servant, but like just a lady or gentleman helping a lady or gentleman. And so that it's supposed to be formal. It's supposed to be thorough. And so that's a good mission statement. Not all businesses have them. Walmart seems to be pretty successful, and they don't have a mission statement. But it's a good tool. And the thing is, the tool is only useful if it works. So a lot of companies spend a lot of time creating mission statements because, well, we have to have a mission statement. We have to have and then they don't implement it. They don't educate the employees on it. So it serves no purpose. The executive committee will create it. I was like, oh, we've got this great, we've got this great mission statement, but it's the frontline employee, the low-level guy that needs it as a guide. And if it's not being communicated there, it's not working. So that's the next part of the marketing plan. Then we'll start looking at the external analysis. So first we look at our market. Is there demand for another hotel? Is there demand for another restaurant? What kind of food do you like, Nathan?
In general, I generally like quick and easy food because I'm a college student who lives an hour away from my college. Like, I travel at least 8 hours a week.
Wow. So what kind of restaurant do we need? What would you like to have nearby?
Generally, I'm stuck with fast food, but places such as Five Guys and Sonic, occasionally if I have an extra 15, 20 minutes, they work perfectly.
Okay. So that the first thing is the market situation. We're going to look out there and see what does the market demand? What do we need? We'll look at other things. We'll look at things like what's going on in the economy at the moment. So like when the economy is bad, fast food tends to do well. Actually, most restaurants do well, but they undergo compression, whereas like that mid-price restaurant starts creating lower price specials. And then the lower price restaurant starts creeping down into fast food cost. And, so we have to know what's going on in the market. That's one step. Then we have to figure out who our customer is. You ever eaten at a Jimmy John's?
I have not.
Jimmy John's is a sandwich shop, and they do delivery. And usually they do delivery on bicycles. And they built their model for the longest time was they build Jimmy John's near a college campus because, and they're open 24 hours a day. And so, college student needs a meal at 2 a.m, call it Jimmy John's, they ride it over on a bike and it's $7, And so that is, and who they built their business around. That was their customer base, was college students. And so they would always build them next to college campuses. Now they've expanded somewhat since then. But that's another big part of this plan is like who are our customers going to be? And again, I can create a restaurant. I can create a fantastic restaurant, but I have to think about who's going to eat there because they're the ones that are going to keep it open. And I need to, whatever appeals to them is what I need to offer. The other part of the external analysis is competition. Who am I going up against? Right now, if I were going to create a restaurant, I would not want to create a burger restaurant. That market is saturated. You've got McDonald's, you got Wendy's, you got Five Guys. That's a harsh environment to fight in. What we don't have a good Vietnamese restaurant. That might, that would be an area to look at. We have a few, but they're nothing that, that is fantastically run. And that seems like low-hanging fruit. Another thing we do is we'll do an internal analysis, which is our strengths and our weaknesses. So, Nathan, as a DM, what are you good at? Like, what strengths do you bring?
The strengths I like to bring is I am a very heavy role player, and I excel with world building and exploration.
So, in gaming, like role playing gaming, do you have? Is there anything you're not particularly good at?
Keeping an accent for a non-player character.
Okay. So right there, that's probably something you're going to work around, right? You're going to try to avoid characters where you have to maintain an accent.
Yes.
Yeah.
To avoid that, I will use an accent to distinguish between myself and the NPC. But in person games, I go off mannerisms. I'll hunch over at the table. If they have a hat, I will literally just plop on a hat.
So what you've done there is that you've analyzed what you're good at and you build to that, and then the things you're not good at, and you find workaround. You'll find a workaround for it, or you'll avoid it. And we do the same thing in business. We find the things that we have internally that we're good at. I'm a really good, cook, or I'm really good with the math end of things. I'm very good at the accounting end of things. So that's a plus. But on the other hand, maybe I'm not creative. And so what I need to do is I'll need to hire a staff that will foster my creativity. Or maybe I'm not good with thorough record keeping and planning. And so what I need to do is I need to hire someone who's basically a manager. And so what we do is we look at what our strengths and our weaknesses, and we build that into our plan so that we can start figuring out who we need to hire, what sort of equipment we need, all the things. We have things that we're good at, and then we have things that we're not good at. I have a friend who bought a restaurant in Indiana, and the restaurant was okay. But one of the things was it was built overlooking a river. So it's actually on a cliff out over a river. And you could never build it again. It's grandfathered in. It was built before laws were in place about wetlands and stuff like that. So you can't ever, there is no other restaurant like this. And that the view of hanging out over the river is a strength. It's a strength no one else has. And so one of the things they did was they made the entire wall over the river windows, because that's a strength that they can sell, that view in the dining room. So that's another thing. We look at what we have and what we don't have, and then plan accordingly. We segment and position. So you don't want to go after everybody, because that's a waste of effort. And just in marketing, trying to reach everybody is hard and it's expensive. If I were to ask you, Nathan, you have one shot at advertising. You're going to get to pick one form of advertising to reach as many people as possible.
Oh, geez.
You got to reach the largest possible audience. Money's no object. What would you do?
Off the top of my head, I'd say a YouTube ad.
A YouTube ad. Well, and what you're going to get is you're going to get people who probably are watching that particular content or in that geographic area, depending, but about the only traditional mass market source of reaching people anymore is the Super Bowl. Super Bowl ads are ridiculously expensive because people watch the halftime show. And the thing is, that's pretty much the only event left where you can get a large audience, because everything is so fragmented now. Some people are watching The Walking Dead, some are watching The Voice, everybody's watching all these different things. The Super Bowl is pretty much the only place we get a large audience. And so those ads are ridiculously expensive, like $500,000 for 30 seconds. And so what we want to do is we want to efficiently go after people. Right? I want to divide up the market into people who are likely to buy my product, and then position myself so that I am the company they think of, and then reach them. I don't want to go after everybody. I want to go after the people that are likely to buy my product. And think about this with things like, think about a hotel. Hotels, if you are driving down the interstate and you see ads, you'll see ads for hotels, between the economy end of things up to maybe $150, like a Holiday Inn Express or something. You do not see ads on the interstate for $450 a night hotel rooms.
No, you do not.
Because the people that are staying in those aren't driving down the interstate. They're flying in. So where you do see ads for those are things like in-flight magazines. And so that's the segmenting and positioning so that you're reaching the right people. Goals and objectives. We need to have a goal for our business. Maybe it's to make a profit the first year. Maybe it's to be the largest, to expand to be the biggest. Maybe it is to, something else. But anyhow, you need a goal. What are you working towards? That's how you create your metric for success. And the last thing that generally goes in this is a plan. What are our steps we're taking to get there? Okay. At the corporate level, it's a little bit different. because we're probably going to go into greater detail about things. So at the corporate level, we're not just looking at what I'm doing, we're thinking about the industry. So how does Marriott differentiate themselves from Hilton? You know, if you were in a hotel room, Nathan, if you walked in with the lights out, you turned the light on, and you stood in the middle of the room, could you tell what kind of hotel room you were in?
Not particularly. Like I travel for conventions a lot, but
Yeah,
most of the time I'm not in my hotel room except for sleep. I
yeah,
can tell the difference in the convention space.
right. But well, can you tell it by brand? Can you tell, oh, this is a Hilton convention space, or this is a Marriott?
G- Generally, I would like to think I can, but I wouldn't bet on it.
So that's the thing is like, and that's the really sad thing. It's like Hilton and Marriott are gigantic billion-dollar corporations that spend tons of money trying to come up with an identity. And so that, you know, that's, they have to compete against each other and like, oh, you should stay at Marriott because we're better than Hilton for these reasons. But that's a huge challenge because basically a hotel room is a bit, you know, it's a clean bed, a TV, and a bathroom. Uh, and to differentiate that product, it's hard. So the corporate level ones are a little different. So you have to think about, you'll probably go more into depths, like about the customer's attitude. Like how does the customer perceive our brand? With a local like property level, that's not so much of an issue. But with the corporate level, it's like how's our brand perceived? Right now, you know, they're all every brand has a um, scandal associated with it. Somebody that won't eat there because of something, or somebody that won't stay there because of something. And so you need to. This creates that you have to be careful, like with your messaging and your advertising, because of these sorts of things. Um, we'll look at longer term strategies. Just we kind of go more in depth when we're at the corporate level. It's a bigger, more complicated um, idea. We have different types of promotions where, say, if you think about Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola has print ads, they have TV ads, they have signage, they have all these things. It all kind of combines to create a single vision of what they're trying to do. Okay. So the market plan, again, I've already talked about the executive summary. It is basically the abstract where you're just kind of, this is the summary. These are the big points. These are the big ideas that someone in charge needs to know. The mission statement, again, it's your reason for existing. I went through this external analysis. One thing you might want to think about is, you know, who are your customers? That's who are they? Let's see. I'm trying to think of the Converse sneakers.
Hmm.
Converse sneakers has done an amazing job. You wouldn't happen to own a pair of all Chuck's Taylors, would you?
No, I have one pair of shoes. That's it.
So you know what Chuck Taylors are?
Not particularly.
They're the old-fashioned sneakers that are like that lace up, they're ankle high, they're canvas, they've got the star on the ankle. Very old,
Okay.
very
Yeah.
old-fashioned looking sneakers. But they've done a great job about constantly marketing themselves to as part of youth culture, which is hilarious because it's youth culture in the 1950s, the 1970s, the 1990s. They continually market themselves as this youth culture shoe, which is pretty funny considering that they are over 100 years old. But that, you know, that's their customer base. They're constantly reinventing the idea of, oh, this is for the, you know, a relatively rebellious, a socially acceptably rebellious type of person to wear. And so that's their base. So that's another, you know, that's one of those things that we get. And then you have the idea of direct and indirect competitors. So if you are going to a convention, where do you stay usually?
In general, most of the conventions I go to are at Marriott's.
Okay, so Marriott's. Now, it's possible, you know, you could stay if there was a Holiday Inn next door. You could stay at a Holiday Inn, right?
Yep.
And walk over to the convention space.
Or a DoubleTree.
Or a
DoubleTrees are very common.
Okay, so those are direct competitors. Those are hotels offering the exact same type of product. But there are indirect competitors. So it could, and one of them could be you're going to a convention in a city where you have a relative. You know,
Yep, done that.
You can stay with your aunt, your uncle, your grandmother, whatever. That's an indirect competitor, or an Airbnb is an indirect competitor. So these are other ways that you could spend your money. Or another indirect competitor, instead of going to a convention, maybe you're going to spend your money on on accessories. So it's like, I'm not going to the convention. I have a certain amount of disposable income. I'm not going to spend it on the convention. I'm going to buy it on these items instead. And so that's indirect. That's indirect competition. So that's another thing that you want to be aware of, so that I can address that. So what if your choice is between attending the convention and buying like a figurine, like a role-playing figurine or something, to tabletop figurine? What I do, I should make those giveaways at the door. And so it's like, oh, well, I could buy it, or I could go there and get one for free. So like, I have removed that competition. We want to look at our competitors and we want to evaluate them. And so this is a fun thing to do. You go and you check out your competition. When you're thinking about opening a business, a hotel, restaurant, whatever, and you go and you write down the name, you write where they're at, you write down the amenities they have to offer. You do your best to estimate who's staying there. Because like maybe, right here in the middle, it says business mix. So if they've got a lot of group business, maybe that is either A, do I want to try and steal that business, or B, do I want to just concede that to them and concentrate somewhere else? Maybe they're really good at that. And I don't want to go head to head. You don't fight where you don't have to. Go for the easy money. Then, like, we just go through and write down the information so that we have points of comparison. Do they offer valet parking? Yes or no? Well, if they do, should I try and come in under them as a less expensive option where I don't have valet parking? Or should I offer that plus other amenities? What you don't want to do is be exactly the same, because then if you're exactly the same, you're an undifferentiated product. And if you're an undifferentiated product, the only thing you can compete on is price. And that's brutal. Think about when you're driving down the interstate and you pass a gas station. If you get off the exit, one gas station is $2 a gallon, and the other is $1.90 next to it, which one do you go to?
In most cases, it's gonna be the $1.90.
Right, and it's like gas is gas. And so if we get to a situation where a hotel room is a hotel room, then all you can compete on is price. One area we've seen this in hospitality is in the airline industry. So when airlines were deregulated, it created a situation where they're not competing on amenities anymore, because people go into things like Orbitz, where it just pulls up all the flights, and people tend to pick the cheapest flight. So when they pick the cheapest flight, they're buying based on price. That's an undifferentiated product, which means the cheapest air seat is going to be the one that sells. And it doesn't matter what, if that's the way people are buying it, that's brutal. And what's happened is every major airline since the year 2000 has declared bankruptcy at least once. It's because their margin is so slim because of the way they compete. Now, after we've done several competitors, we can write them down. And now we, create a sheet. I talked about we examine our competitors. Well, this is what it would look like when we do that. We're looking at who we're competing with and what they have to offer. Then, looking at the external market share. What I want to look out there is like, there are, in our market, how many hotel rooms a night do we sell? Well, maybe we sell 1,000. Is there demand for more? If there are, how many more? And I can start figuring out what the market needs or doesn't need. Okay, let's see, talked about these things in competition, marketing situation, talked about internal analysis of strengths and weaknesses. I'll go into a little more detail with this. One way we can do it, what we usually do is what's called a SWOT analysis. where we have strengths and weaknesses on a grid, and then we'll have internal and external, and then we'll just compare. And this is basically one way we can do this when we're looking at our strengths and weaknesses. We can put number values to them. And so again, this is just kind of like helping you make a decision. Now, Nathan, one thing about these numbers, there is probably not a real solid metric of what's the difference between a 5 and what's the difference between a 4. It's going to be it's going to be a gut feeling kind of thing.
It's kind of relative.
Yeah. So again, don't think of this as like some magic, it's not calculus. This is a pretty basic just estimate to give you a tool. And then we do it. The other thing that we look at is importance. How important is this item? How important is this? How important is having a banquet space? How important is having a pool front rooms? How important is having a valet?
Yep. Like for one example, if you don't mind me interrupting,
no, please.
I forget the convention in the hotel off the top of my head. I've been to so many, they all just kind of blend together. And we went to this convention and we were there Wednesday night, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, leaving Monday. We were there for a time. And we got to the hotel room. Everything was great. Thursday morning came around and we noticed they didn't have a coffee machine in the room.
Oh, no.
And when you have 4 people in that hotel room, when all of us are staff members for that convention, yeah, that's the convention. Okay. Yeah, we were all staff members for that convention. So all of us were getting up at 7 a.m. to work 12, 14 hours for this con. And there was no coffee machine. So one of us is like, okay, on my break, I'm going to Walmart. I'm buying a coffee machine.
So
that's what we had to do.
How important was it? That may be a 5. Whereas if the room didn't have a mini fridge, that may be a 1. Maybe that doesn't matter. Would it matter if they have room service? It's like if you don't order room service, no, that's a 1.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's like, so that's, we have to look at our customers and just kind of figure that out. So here's the grid, and the things that are very important performance-wise and very important, are very, important to our customer-wise. That's where we're going to spend our effort. The things that are both important to the business, profitable, and things that are important to our customer, that's what we concentrate on. So Weston several years ago did a survey of people staying there. Westons are primarily people on business trips, and they surveyed the business people. It's like, what is the most important thing for you when you stay in a business class hotel? And they were open to anything. It could be, we need a good meal. I need proximity to computer. I need access to a fax machine or a computer. I need a printer, or it could whatever. It could be anything. And what do you think business travelers said the most important thing to them was?
I think I remember reading this case study. It was a phone that they could talk anywhere in the room or something like that.
No, they may have redone it, but the original thing they came up with was a good night's sleep. That was the most important thing to the business traveler, was a good night's sleep. So what Weston did was all the room, they were one of the first sound deadening, room darkening blinds. And they created what was called the heavenly bed, which was a pillow top mattress with high thread count cotton sheets, a down comforter, 6 pillows, two goose down, 2 firm, 2 soft, this complete amazing bed. I stayed in one in the early 2000s, and I'd heard about the heavenly bed. This is how good it was. I bought it. You can go on the website and buy the heavenly bed, and they will ship it to you. I bought it. I still have it. It is the most amazingly comfortable night's sleep possible. But that's where they, so that's what Weston said. Was their area of concentration, was this is important, and this is what we're good at. This is where we're going to put our effort. We're going to create the best night's sleep for our customers. Now, a lot of hotels have copied the idea since then, but for a long time that gave them this edge. So for things that you're good at that are, less important, you keep doing it. Things that are that are not very important, but you're good at, yeah, don't worry about it too much. And the things that are not important and you're not good at, if it doesn't matter to the customer and you're not providing it well, stop. Because use those resources for something else. If you have a valet and he never gets used because the customers don't care, get rid of them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wasted money.
Yeah. Okay, so I think hit pretty much everything there. The last step is the action plan, which is just where are we going forward? So I'm going to build a new hotel. The first thing I'm do is I've got to get construction done, and that's going to start in January, and then we're going to start hiring in February, and then we're going to start training in March, and we're going to need this many people because we need 42 servers and we need 18 people to work in the hotel. And then how much do I pay them? Well, I have to look at what salaries are and how much is it, how much are we going to have to carry in debt from building. And so we create a budget. We create all these things that are going to be our first steps. So in our marketing plan, the action plan is, if you approve this, if you loan me the money, if we go forward, this is the next step. And the first step, like step one, we have a good idea. Step one is going to be buy land or whatever. And when we get to step 20, well, maybe that step isn't going to happen, or maybe that step's going to be really different. But again, we have a plan, and we make the best plan we can, and we come up with as many contingencies as we can, so that we've thought things through before we encounter them. Okay. Last little bit here about budgeting, and I'll just explain I'll explain a little bit about budgeting for a business. There are two approaches you can use for budgeting. Top-down budgeting is, here's your pot of money, divide it up and do what you can with it. Okay. Bottom-up budgeting is, this is how much I have to pay this employee, this is how much I have to pay in rent, this is how much I have to pay for supplies. That's your budget. So one is, I'm starting with a pile of money and then I'm allocating it. And the bottom, I'm starting out with basically what my debts are and figuring out how much money I need. And both of them are valid. And you have to think about both of them. Top down, we have to know how much money we have. Realistically, I don't know about you, Nathan. I don't have an unlimited pile of money.
No, not at all.
So again, I have to think, top down, how much do I have to work with? But then from the bottom up, well, this is how much that my mortgage is. So I have to have that much each month. And this is how much my power bill is. So I have to have that. So that's a bottom up building of the budget. The top down is looking at, well, this is my paycheck and dividing it up. So that's it really for the marketing plan section. It's a short chapter. Thanks for joining me, Nathan. Do you have any questions?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop and I'll talk to, if you want to ask any questions, feel free to email me.